Right now, our pressure house represents the normal home. It's leaky, but the folks living in it are happy and content. And this is a small family, a couple children, mom and dad. It has a lot of air leakage issues. There are large bypasses in the attic and crawl space. The ductwork is not so efficient, it has leaks in it. And we have a combustion appliance zone, being our hot water heater and a natural draft furnace. We're going to learn a little bit about how we can diagnose things that are going on inside of our CAZ area. To define that for you, CAZ, or CAZ, is an abbreviation for the Combustion Appliance Zone. This zone can be just the utility closet, or it could be the entire house. This really is going to depend on the area from which the combustion appliances, or those appliances that burn fuel, fossil fuels, to produce heat or energy in some way, are in that area. Those things all need air to combust properly and to draft properly. So they're going to be pulling air from a portion of the house. In our case, we have a louvered door, so our combustion appliance zone really is the entire house. And so opening and closing doors or turning on exhaust fans and furnaces are going to affect the pressures in our CAZ. We also have in this CAZ what we refer to as natural draft appliances. That means that these appliances need air from the CAZ area to properly exhaust all of the combustion fumes. They generally have air intakes directly on the appliance, and they're going to pull air from our CAZ area to go up the chimney. We call them natural draft because they have no fan assistance. A power drafted water heater or a 90+ high efficiency furnace has a draft assist fan that will help pull air out of the house so that we don't have to worry as much about having a CAZ problem. So this house is leaky right now, and every day there's a family that lives in it. They're happy, they're content. It's a happy house, no real issues, but it's not highly energy efficient. So we're going to walk through a common scenario that happens every day in this home and see how it affects the combustion appliance area. And right now we currently have our lights on, and we have some smoke going up the chimney to represent flue gases, which contain carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide, as we all know, is odorless, colorless, tasteless, and completely invisible. There's no way for you to be able to know if it's present. However, we like to use fog because that allows us to visually demonstrate what's going on inside the chimney. So to start with, every day, family gets up and they turn on their air handler. Whether it's wintertime or summertime, they want to balance the temperatures out in their house that have changed overnight because the house is not terribly efficient. So we can see with the streamers flowing that we have some air movement going on in the house now. And then generally in everybody's house, there's a bathroom exhaust fan. And as soon as that bathroom is used, whether it's a shower or just a trip to the bathroom, somebody turns on the bathroom exhaust fan. Now what's happening is that exhaust fan is exhausting air out of the house. Now, one rule we have to keep in mind is that for every CFM, which means cubic feet per minute, of air that travels out of the home, 1 cubic foot of air has to come into the home from somewhere. Generally, at this point, they're coming in from high leakage areas, such as the crawl space, the attic, perhaps out of the garage. So, right now, the home has no problem getting all the air it needs. So let's continue our scenario. Somebody goes downstairs and they decide they want to cook breakfast. One of the first things they do is they turn on their range hood. That comes on and we can see it now. And then at some point, somebody needs some dry clothes. Perhaps they were washed last night but not dried, so somebody turns on the dryer. What's happening is we're continuing to pull air out of the house, which means that new air is coming into the house. Currently, it's coming in through high leakage areas out of the attic, crawl space, and other areas, perhaps your garage. Right now, the house is working just fine. We can see our flue gases are still continuing up the flue. We have no issues there. And once again, the family is happy and content. They enjoy breakfast together. Everybody gets their stuff together and goes off to work and school and wherever else they may go that day, and they turn everything off. This goes on for many years. No problems exist in the house. It's happy, it's healthy, it's safe. But energy costs are continuing to rise. Electricity goes from 5 or 6 cents a kilowatt hour to 11 cents a kilowatt hour. Propane and natural gas continues to rise in price. As this happens, the energy burden on the family becomes very high. Eventually what happens, they start getting bills for the energy cost that really are very difficult to pay. So they call Big Mike's Contracting to come out and help improve the efficiency of their home. He decides, yes, they need more insulation, and he's been through a couple classes and he knows he needs to air seal that house before he insulates it. So that's what he's going to do. Let's walk through it as Mike would do it, and let's air seal this home before insulating. Let's briefly talk about some common air sealing problems that we're going to address in a house like this. We're going to start over here. This is an interior wall, and frequently the top plates and bottom plates of this wall are going to have penetrations through them, plumbing, electrical, things like that, and very rarely are those penetrations sealed correctly. That allows airflow from the attic or crawl space into this interior wall inside the envelope, which then usually is going to leak out through other penetrations in that interior wall. Here we see a very common thing. This represents a chaseway from attic to crawl space. It may contain ductwork, it may contain plumbing penetrations, but the problem is this is usually unsealed at the top and bottom where these penetrations enter the envelope, and they can be very large holes frequently. So we have air coming into here, which then comes into the interior of our house. Often through things like this would represent an unsealed chimney entry. Often these fireplaces are removed and the chimney is left. So we want to make sure those are sealed. Another common penetration are our vent stacks, perhaps from an appliance such as a dryer or a hot water heater, and they're not sealed correctly around the top, so there's a lot of air leakage here. Another common area is our attic access. These are very rarely weather stripped or sealed properly, and they can be a very high source of leakage. Another common problem that we'll address is a drop soffit in a kitchen. Usually these are added so that the cabinets can be lowered from the ceiling, but it's still aesthetically pleasing. However, they're almost never sealed in the attic, so you have a large area inside your house that's allowing airflow of unconditioned air into the conditioned space. So we're going to want to cap that off at our attic level and seal that as well. Another very common place is underneath of tubs or showers. We'll see plumbing penetrations or ductwork that's hidden, maybe in a stairwell, where they cut a large hole for a very small pipe and then they don't bother to seal that back. This can also be a very high source of leakage. These would all be areas that Mike would be looking to seal properly before he finishes his work here. So we've just finished air sealing this home. We went inside and looked at some of the common bypasses and air leakage areas. We've gone ahead and sealed them up before insulating. Let's go back to our scenario. So Mike has gone in and he's performed similar work. He has air sealed everything, he's insulated it, and he feels that he's done a good job. So on the way home, he drops a bill in the mail for Mom and Dad. Tomorrow morning arrives, and the family goes through their usual routine. As we discussed earlier, they turn on their furnace and air handler nearly every morning when they get up. So we'll turn that on. And once again, the bathroom is used and the exhaust fan is turned on. So we're continuing to exhaust air as we normally do. Then someone goes downstairs and they want to cook breakfast and they turn on their range hood fan. And then, of course, last but not least, our dryer is turned on. Now let's observe what happens in our CAS area. We have combustion gases coming back into the house, as we can see above our water heater. This means that carbon monoxide and flue gas is being pulled back into the house. And really, what Mom and Dad has sitting right there next to it in the form of their furnace is a very expensive carbon monoxide distribution system. Now, if Mike was smart, hopefully he installed a carbon monoxide alarm in that house. And it is sounding now, alerting the family to the danger. So Mike has arrived on the scene, and he pretty quickly understands what needs to be done. He realizes that he sealed the house much too tight without providing proper makeup air for his combustion appliances. So he's going to do the cheapest and easiest thing to fix this problem, which in this case is to add a louvered vent, as we see on the front of the pressure house there. Now let's see if Mike's fix has been sufficient. We're going to turn on our air handler, our bathroom exhaust, our range hood, and our dryer. Now let's see what happens. It appears as though Mike has fixed the problem. But let's go one step further. Let's close our bedroom doors and see what happens when we do that. Almost immediately, we can see that the natural draft water heater is beginning to backdraft. So the volume of the house has now been reduced by closing the doors. The bedrooms, whose air was included in the volume of the CAS, has now been taken out. So now the amount of air available has been reduced so that the chimneys do not have enough air to properly exhaust their fumes. So we can see how just closing the bedroom doors has negated Mike's fix. We're going to add a little bit more makeup air to this home now. And we're going to do that by means of a passive vent, which I'm going to open in the front. It would appear that the combustion makeup air that we've added has been sufficient to fix our CAS problem. But we're not through. It just so happens that this weekend, one of the kids decided to go into the attic and move some old boxes around. Now while they were up there, there was a 6-inch flex duct line that was not properly attached. Let's open the attic supply leak and see what happens to our CAS area. You will notice that the attic supply leak is beginning to open. As that damper opens, we will begin to see what happens in our CAS area. Let's observe. Once again, our water heater begins to backdraft. Now why do you suppose that happened? The reason that happens is because now the supply air is not getting back to the conditioned space. Therefore, the return is having to pull air from other places to make up the amount of volume that it needs. So simply, one 6-inch flex line in the attic being knocked loose because of improper attachment and sealing is creating a health and safety issue in our home. Well, let's go inside now and let's walk through a basic CAS test so that you don't have the same problems that Mike does. What we're going to do now is walk you through a very basic CAS test. Now remember that every house is going to be different. There can be multiple CAS areas, multiple CAS appliances, and different types of exhaust fans. So this is just a very basic model so that you'll understand the simple basics of a CAS test. We would certainly recommend that you continue your education and learn more about this in the future. Before beginning a CAS test, you're going to want to make sure that you have all the proper equipment to perform the test. To start with, you're going to need a manometer. Now they make digital and analog manometers. However, we would certainly recommend a digital one as these are much easier to use. You're going to also need several lengths of reference hose. One of these is for checking pressure to the outside of the house, another for your draft gauge, and another for checking room-to-room pressures. You're going to also need a draft gauge for inserting into the chimney and checking the actual draft of the appliance. And most importantly, you're going to need a personal carbon monoxide monitor. This is to ensure that during the test, you're not exposed to dangerous conditions inside the house. At this point, if you've gathered all your materials, we can go ahead and enter the house and get started with our CAS test. We're going to run a reference hose to the outside of our CAS, actually completely out of our house, so that we can see what the pressure difference is inside our CAS as compared to what it is outside. And that hose is going to be attached to your manometer on your reference side. Then we're going to make sure we have our hose for our draft gauge run from our draft gauge to the input side of our manometer. At this point, we can go ahead and set up our doors and windows in the house for our CAS test. We'll start by closing all exterior doors and windows and any openings such as attic accesses or garage doors so that our exterior is sealed from our interior. We're also going to make sure that all of our interior doors are open. Now we're going to go ahead and start our CAS test by turning off any combustion appliance in the house. We do not want any of these appliances to fire or start up in the middle of our setup, as this could affect both our health and the safety of the occupants. We'll go ahead and turn off or turn to pilot any water heaters, furnaces, stoves, ovens, or any other source of combustion gas in the house. After we make sure that our combustion appliances are off, we'll go ahead and turn on our furnace air handler. Now remember, we're not turning on the heat mode and we're not firing our furnace. We're simply turning on the circulating fan in our air handler so that the supplies and returns can go ahead and start to move air and show us any pressure differences that are being created by this. We're also going to turn on all the exhaust appliances in the house. These may be range hoods, bathroom exhaust fans, dryers, or any other appliance that's going to remove air from the house or transfer air from one portion of the house to the other. Once all of these items are on, we can begin going around the house and checking our pressures by opening and closing the doors and see whether or not opening and closing those doors makes our pressure in our CAS worse or better. In our case, worse is always going to be a more negative pressure, and an improvement in our CAS is going to be a positive pressure. For the purpose of our CAS test, we're looking for what we call worst case CAS. This is going to be the most difficult situation for the combustion appliances to draft properly. So it will be the largest negative depressurization in our CAS area. As we go around the house and open and close doors, there's another simple method that we can use to determine if these doors should be opened or closed. And that's to use a smoke stick. So we're going to go around to our interior doors now, and we're going to partially close them and puff a little smoke in the direction of the crack that's left in the open door. If that smoke blows towards your nose, you should leave the door closed. But if that smoke goes into the room, is sucked into the room, then we want to make sure that that door is open. This is because that room may be positively pressured or negatively pressured, depending upon the supply and exhaust balances in the house. Now, once we've established that all of our interior doors are in their proper setting, we can begin our CAS test. And we'll do that by coming into our CAS area, and we'll go ahead and fire up our first appliance. In many cases, what you'll see is a commonly vented water heater and furnace. This means that the vent stack from both the water heater and the furnace entered the same common chimney and exit the building. If that is the case, you'll want to fire your smaller BTU appliance first. That's usually going to be your water heater. So we will go ahead and we'll turn on our water heater and allow it to fire up, at which point we'll use a smoke stick to test for spillage and make sure that we're not having combustion gases escaping into the house. After a set period of time, we'll go ahead and we'll put our draft gauge into the chimney and check and see if the chimney is properly drafting. If it continues to draft well under worst case scenario, then once we've documented that, we can turn it off and go ahead and begin our test on our second appliance. In this case, it's going to be a furnace. So we'll perform the same series of tests that we did with our water heater. We'll go ahead and turn the furnace on, we'll check for spillage, and then we'll verify draft. Once again, if this appliance passes our draft protocols, we'll record that and shut it down. At this point, if both of our appliances have passed draft individually, we can go ahead and test them now together. Now, whether these appliances are commonly vented or individually vented, we're going to want to make sure that we test each one with the other one running. The reason for this is that a properly drafting combustion appliance really becomes an exhaust appliance once it's drafting. This is because it's pulling air out of our CAS area much the same as an exhaust fan would. So once we have begun this test, we'll go ahead and we'll turn on one of our appliances, make sure it's drafting properly, and then perform the same CAS test on the other appliance. And we'll do this both with our furnace and our water heater. After you perform these tests, if you still have a combustion appliance that fails draft under worst case conditions, you need to make sure that you both document and fix the problem before you leave the property. Your failure to do this could bring liability upon yourself or even cause the death of an occupant. So it's very important that we address this problem before we leave the property. We hope you've enjoyed this portion of our training program. As you can see, CAS testing is an important part of weatherization, and it should be an important part that we include every time we weatherize a house with combustion appliances. We hope you've enjoyed your training here, and we would certainly recommend that you return to the New River Center for Energy Research and Training for further trainings on this matter. Thank you very much.
For more information about the New River Center for Energy Research and Training, please visit us at nrcert.org. Or you can call the NRCert office at 540-260-9081. The New River Center for Energy Research and Training, conserving energy today for a greener tomorrow.